Fair warning, tonight's moment of geek involves poop, but it's not your ordinary run-of-the-mill poop, it's radioactive rabbit poop. In south-central Washington state, the Hanford Nuclear Reservation produced the majority of the plutonium that we used in nuclear weapons starting in World War II and continuing through the 1980s. Hanford also produced more than 43 million cubic yards of radioactive waste and over 130 million cubic yards of contaminated soil and debris. Hanford's now the focus of the largest environmental cleanup in the country. Part of the cleanup has to do with 50 million gallons of liquid waste from plutonium production processes that was dumped at Hanford. It's liquid waste that's laced with radioactive cesium and strontium salts. One little known fact about radioactive strontium salts, apparently jackrabbits find them delicious. In the words of the Seattle Post-Intelligencer, quote, "Jackrabbits routinely burrowed into those sites. They found the salt, liked it, and licked it. Later they pooped it, leaving slightly radioactive scat all over the ground." And now we know it's okay to use pooped as a verb in the pages of the Seattle Post-Intelligencer. The radioactive poop that these bunnies are leaving all over the Hanford site is now, thanks to your stimulus dollars, being collected as low-level radioactive waste. The Department of Energy hired a contractor to fly a helicopter mounted with Geiger counters and GPS technology, and they fly the chopper over the rabbit poop-laden Hanford landscape. The chopper methodically covers the whole 14-square-mile area at a height of about 50 feet, flying at about 80 miles an hour. They GPS mark every single radioactive piece of rabbit poop, and then they send their unlucky employees out with a map to collect it all. The nuclear poop is then dumped along with all the rest of Hanford's mildly radioactive trash on a huge landfill that everyone hopes will just be fine someday if we seal it and cover it up enough. Oh, the nuclear age. Can't you just smell the progress? Joining us now is Nathan Hodge, reporter with Wired.com's national security blog Danger Room and co-author of the book A Nuclear Family Vacation, Travels in the World of Atomic Weaponry. Mr. Hodge, thanks very much for talking with us tonight.
Hey, thanks for having me, Rachel.
I know that rabbits and rabbit poop are not the most important thing to know about nukes, but I have to start by asking you if this rabbit issue resonates with you. Are animals part of the management issues that we have to deal with at our nuclear sites in this country?
Well, I've always thought that nuclear weaponry was far too important of a subject to take seriously, and what better way of reminding the public of the legacy of nuclear testing and the nuclear complex than radioactive rabbit poo? No, it has been a factor. In fact, I visited a few years back another facility which isn't a cleanup site. It's a part of the active nuclear complex, Y-12. It also dates back to the Manhattan Project. And they had a problem there with too many deer inside the wire. And so every year they would organize a deer hunt. And the one thing that you had to do after you bagged your deer, had to check it for radiation.
You had to check it for radiation, and then if they found radiation, you couldn't take that deer home, presumably.
Probably a bad idea.
I understand. Hanford has been closed since the 80s. We think about these Cold War production sites as gone, over, and forgotten, but our responsibility for dealing with nuclear waste and nuclear security issues at these sites is forever. How many places are there like this in the U.S.?
Well, you know, during the course of researching our book, we went to 10 states and 5 different countries, all of which are dealing with this legacy in one way, shape, or form. For instance, you can go out to Semipalatinsk in Kazakhstan, where the Soviets touched off hundreds of nukes, and still to this day, they're still trying to map out where they actually did all of these atomic tests. Another problem that they had were people were going in the down and out post-Soviet days, and they were digging up lots of irradiated metal and things like that to sell nice on the open market.
You know, I'm a big fan of your book, Nuclear Family Vacation. It's been vacation reading for me. If you had to recommend one American nuclear site as a tourism destination, what would you recommend that people try to go see?
If people really want to go and see a great place for nuclear tourism, that would be the Nevada test site. First of all, it's close to Vegas. But secondly, you can really get a sense of the horrific power of nuclear weaponry, because there are still places where you can see the actual craters that were excavated by nuclear detonations. And of course, there's a history of tourism there. People in the 50s actually used to go and see, have picnics to watch, mushroom clouds.
Wow. The big picture here, when I think about Hanford, all the low-level radioactive dumping they're doing now, including the rabbit poop and everything else, it makes me wonder if we really have solved the problem of what to do with all our radioactive trash that we've got. Do we have a national system for dealing with this?
No, we don't really have sort of, and more importantly, we've got to deal with the legacy in places like the Pacific, the Marshall Islands, for instance, where we touched off our first, we did our first hydrogen bomb tests. They're still cleaning up after that, and we've got to deal with that legacy as well.
Nathan Hodge, reporter with Wired.com's national security blog Danger Room, which I read every day, and co-author of the book A Nuclear Family Vacation, Travels in the World of Atomic Weaponry. Thanks very much for your time tonight, Nathan. I'm sorry to make you talk about poop.
Anytime, Rachel.
All right, thank you.